Welcome back. Today we're discussing if Daniel predicts Jesus and as well the events surrounding Jesus, such as Jerusalem's destruction. Now, before we get into the prophecies concerning Jesus from the book of Daniel, it's important to understand some basic details and premises of the book itself. The book of Daniel is an apocalyptic text. The traditional view of when it was written is around the 6th century BC. Now, there is some debate over this, but for the sake of the argument, I will be taking the 6th century position. There is as well debate over whether or not Daniel actually wrote the book, but the author of the book does confirm himself to be Daniel on multiple occasions, which is especially important for ancient literature. Of course then, if Daniel did write this book, he wrote it during the Babylonian exile in the city of Babylon itself. Jesus claims to be the Son of Man on multiple occasions. For example, in Mark 14:62, he says this, "I am, and you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power, and coming with the clouds of heaven." Jesus uses his phrase, Son of Man, in this verse, and many others, as if the surrounding Jews knew what that meant. But in fact, they did know this. The Son of Man phrase traditionally meant the Messiah. To understand where it comes from, we need to go back to the book of Daniel. Daniel describes this Son of Man figure in Daniel 7:13 when he says this, "I kept looking in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, one like a Son of Man was coming. And he came up to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him, and to him was given dominion, honor, and a kingdom." Daniel then further describes the glory of this Son of Man. In line 14, he continues as such, "So that all peoples, nations, and populations of all languages might serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which will not pass away, and his kingdom is one which will not be destroyed." In these verses, Daniel describes an eternal heavenly kingdom which will be established by the Son of Man. Of course, Jesus preaches this kingdom of heaven on multiple occasions. These verses show us why Jesus claims to be the Son of Man, as simply he's claiming to be the Messiah who shall establish all these things. As we've already established, the Son of Man in Daniel chapter 7 is the Messiah. After this, Daniel then prophesies in chapter 9 of when and what shall happen to this Messiah figure. In Daniel 9:24, he says this, "70 weeks of 7 years have been decreed for your people in your holy city to finish wrongdoing, to make an end of sin, to make atonement for guilt, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place." He continues further in verse 25 as such, "So you are to know and understand that from the issuing of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah, the Prince, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. It will be built again with streets and moat, even in times of distress." These two verses establish many things. To start off, Daniel speaks of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem. In context, the Babylonians who captured Daniel and the Jews destroyed Jerusalem and the temple in 586 BC. The decree that Daniel speaks of to rebuild Jerusalem and the temple was made by King Artaxerxes in 457 BC. Daniel speaks of this Messiah to come after the rebuilding of the temple. In fact, Daniel says exactly when this shall happen. He uses the phrase 70 weeks of 7 years. When you put these two together, it multiplies to 490 years. If you take 457 BC from when the temple was decreed to be built, and add 490 years for when the Messiah shall come, you perfectly get 33 AD. This is the supposed date to when Jesus was crucified. In fact, Daniel actually talks about the Messiah dying, just as Jesus did. Daniel says this in Daniel 9:26, "Then after 62 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off and have nothing, and the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. And its end will come with a flood. Even to the end there will be war. Desolations are determined." In this verse, Daniel describes how the Messiah will be cut off. This simply means to be killed. Daniel then predicts Jerusalem's destruction and as well how the temple or sanctuary is to be destroyed. Notice how Daniel describes the destruction of Jerusalem to occur after the Messiah's death. Jesus, of course, claimed to be this Messiah. He was eventually killed, and after his death, Jerusalem and the temple was actually historically destroyed in 70 AD by the Roman Empire. When you put all the evidence together, it is clear that Daniel is prophesying of the coming Messiah. Like I said, this Messiah was to come 490 years after the decree of the rebuilding of the temple in 457 BC. This Messiah has to come around 33 AD based on that time frame. And of course, has to as well come and be killed before the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. Jesus fulfills every one of these prophecies. Thank you for watching. We just hit 100 subscribers, so I'm very thankful you guys are loving the content. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe, and as always, God bless.